Well, I've had my first block today. Interestingly enough. Comment. Link down below to the video. Check it out. If you like his videos, subscribe to Flying333. You know he blocked me. He does make some good videos, and I have enjoyed him in the past. I think his latest tirades on philosophy, while partly correct, are throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There are problems with philosophy, especially when it's used in bad, terrible ways, often by deists and some atheists who don't understand it. But I don't think you can throw out the entire thing. I think it has its point. Just because something hasn't brought any new understanding doesn't mean it can't help us understand things. The current thing was about his complaint about the is-ought fallacy. He seems to be stating, and again, if somebody can correct me, let me know, that the is-ought is wrong because, survival is paramount and important to us, so therefore it ought to be important. And I may be wrong, but I thought the is-ought fallacy doesn't state that some ises might not necessarily come from an ought, but the fact that they don't automatically correlate. Correlation is not equal causation kind of a thing. Just because something is a certain way does not mean it automatically ought to be. Genocide, infanticide, rape, and certain things. Other things happen in the animal kingdom. Does not mean we ought to do those things. Everything like that. There are many things. The Christians use this a lot. Sex is for procreation, therefore it ought only be for procreation. It does not follow. Stuff like that. That's where I think the problem is he's trying to correlate the two things. And it is a fallacy. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's never justified. Because you have to use something outside the is to get an ought. But either way, it still stands, that there is a reason for it being a fallacy. I don't think it's saying, 100% can't ever, but there has to be more than just the is. And the second part, where he got really pissed off at me, was I was trying to use an example where, every fallacy has some exceptions, And I was saying to him that he makes some x's are true, therefore all x's are true. That if he's right, some oughts can be derived from oughts. Therefore, none of the fallacy is wrong. Because, just because there are exceptions doesn't mean it's always wrong. And the example I gave was appeal to authority. The way I've often heard it is appeal to authority is not the fallacy of appealing to an authority. It's appealing to an authority that has no expertise on the subject. The example I gave was appealing to a pastor who says evolution is wrong, is a fallacy. Appealing and saying 99% of scientists accept evolution is not a fallacy. And he said rightly that the facts and information prove evolution, not that 99% of scientists. But the point is, 99% of the scientists in the subjects of evolution, biology, and whatnot, that have the understanding, expertise, knowledge, and education to determine whether or not evolution is true, accept it. Because it would have to be some grand conspiracy or some sort of massive idiocy or mistake on human example for all these scientists to not completely misjudge a subject. And that's the point, is that they understand the subject far better than me, a fundamentalist Christian or layman, or a pastor has to determine whether or not evolution is true. Yes, the facts are what determine it's true, but they have the expertise to decide that for sure. So, let me know. Maybe I'm wrong, because maybe I'm wrong about the appeal to authority, because that's why I've heard it quite a few times, and I can find a few places online that say that. You know. But maybe I'm wrong, because I've heard people argue both ways, but that's, like I said, what I think. Comment below, let me know your thoughts. Check out Flying Free's videos, subscribe to him if you like him. Definitely worth checking out. Just, I know some people aren't going to enjoy his tirades about philosophy. And if you do, go ahead. So let me know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to know why I'm wrong. You know, he blocked and got pissed off because, you know, I mentioned rape, and because, you know, something about the appeal to authority, I think he was misunderstanding or getting confused. Either way, he got upset. So let me know where I made a mistake.